Okay, I need for you to get this same note sheet out. This is the last kind of factoring that we'll learn. We talked about set 1, greatest common factor. We talked about set 2, which was factoring when the leading coefficient is 1. And remember we talked about you always have to take out a GCF first, any kind of factoring that you do. So let's do set 3, which are also trinomials, but this time the leading coefficient is greater than 1, which means the first term is not 1. So you notice right here on number 13, the first term is a 2. So we have a different process that we have to use. There's no common factor, so the first step on these is to take the first term, 2, and multiply it times the last term, 18. Okay, that's 36. I'm still going to use this x. I'll put that on the bottom. My b term, which is in the middle, on the top. I'm still doing the same process. I'm looking for what multiplies to 36, adds to negative 15, which would be negative 12 and negative 3. I do something a little different. I can't go to the final answer. So I'm going to draw this 2 by 2 box, and I'm going to put the first term, 2x squared, here. I'm going to put the last term, 18, in the last box. Then I go to my x. I take the 2 factors I just found. I insert those, but I put x behind them. And I'm getting that x from that middle term right there. That b term has an x behind it. And if I took those 2 factors, negative 12x and negative 3x, and add them, I would get that b term. This is called busting the b's. I go to my box. I look on the top row, which is here. I'm taking out the greatest common factor, which is 2x. I go to the bottom row. The common factor is 3, but a negative comes first. And if a negative comes first, you always have to take out the negative also. Now I'm going to go to this column, up and down, the greatest common factor. I can't take a number out other than 1. The greatest common factor is x. I look at the second column. If I'm looking down, a negative's coming first, so I take out a negative. And the greatest common factor of those 2 terms is a negative 6. Okay, I am at my final answer. I just take the sides of that box, 2x minus 3, x minus 6. I put those in parentheses, and that's my final answer. Now again, if you take that answer and multiply it out, you should get what you started with. Number 14, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do first times last. 5 times negative 48 is negative 240. I put the middle term on top. I'm trying to find what multiplies to negative 240, adds to 22, which is 30 and negative 8. I go draw my box. You notice the first term is not a 1, it is a 5, so I have to do the box also. I put the first term in the first box, the last term in the last box. I take the 2 numbers from the X puzzle, 30, put a P behind it. I get the P from right there. Negative 8, put the P behind it. Now I'm going to take and find the GCF going across and up and down. So if I look at the top row, the GCF is 5P. Bottom row, remember a negative comes first, I take it out. Then I look up and down, the GCF is P. Up and down, the GCF is 6. Write my final answer, 5p minus 8 times p plus 6. All right, going to the next one, number 15. I don't have a leading coefficient of 1, so I do the same thing. First times last is 120. I want to find out what multiplies to 120, adds to negative 19, which is negative 24 and 5. I draw my box. Remember, you have to draw a box if the leading coefficient is not 1. So 3h squared, last term in the last box. I take my factors from the x, put them in here with h behind them. I'll look at the top row. I get the greatest common factor, which is 3h. Bottom row is 5. Up and down is h. Up and down in the second column, a negative comes first. I take it out. So that's negative 8. Final answer is 3h plus 5, h minus 8. Number 16, same process. I multiply first times last. That's negative 24. I want to know what adds to 5. That would be 8, negative 3. Since the leading coefficient is not 1, I draw my box. First term in the first box. Last term in the last box. I take the factors from the x puzzle. I put x behind them. I get the greatest common factor on the top row, which is 4x. Bottom row, negative 1. Remember, a negative comes first. You take it out. Up and down, first column, the greatest common factor is 3x. And then also 2, the final answer, 4x minus 1, 3x plus 2. All right, remember we talked about always check for a common factor, because if you have a common factor, you have to take that out first. Moving to 17, there's no common factor. So first times last is negative 126. And I want to find out what adds to negative 5. That's going to be 9 and negative 14. I draw my box. First term in the first box. Last term in the last box. I take the numbers from the x, put y behind them. And then I get my greatest common factors. On the top is 3y. Bottom is negative 7. Up and down is 2y. And then that last column is 3. So 3y minus 7, 2y plus 3. Number 18, those numbers are pretty large, but luckily there's a common factor of 2 that I can take out. And remember, when you take a common factor out, then you go through and divide by that common factor. So if I divide by 2, I would be left with that trinomial. Now I can factor, and I'm looking at what's just in parentheses. So first times last is negative 216. I want to know what adds to 30. That's going to be 36 and negative 6. I can draw my x. First term in the first box, last term in the last box. I take those factors, put m behind them. I look on the top row, and the greatest common factor is 4m. The bottom row is negative 3. The first column is 2m, and the last column is 9. Now, one thing I don't need to forget, I took a common factor out. I have to bring that down. It's part of the answer. So that's 2 times 4m minus 3, 2m plus 9. That is the final answer. You just make sure to include that common factor if you take one out. 19 does not have a common factor. Multiply first times last. I want to know what multiplies to 36, adds to negative 12, which is negative 6 and negative 6. Draw my box. I get the GCF on the top row, which is 3x. Bottom row is negative 2. First column, 3x, negative 2. So that's 3x minus 2, 3x minus 2, or 3x minus 2 squared. Okay, our last one has a common factor of 8. I can go through, divide each term by 8, which is y squared plus 7y plus 12. If you notice in parentheses, the leading coefficient is 1. So I don't have to do first times last, and I'm not going to do the box either. So I'm just looking for what multiplies to 12 and adds to 7, which is 4 and 3. Bring down my 8. I can go straight to the final answer since there was a 1 at the beginning. So that's y plus 4, y plus 3. Just make sure you include that 8 in your final answer.